Hi, Adam, Ben.
Hey Tony, how you getting
Mm,
on?
Good. This is perhaps the first time I've had two guests on at the same time virtually. So it's a first for the podcast.
So we're,
Uh,
we're going to have to sort of like try and negotiate by looking at the camera of who's going to talk at each time then, I suppose.
Yeah,
yeah,
I kept it
I'll try.
muted. I wasn't sure what the process was.
We're going to be highly professional. I will prompt you. So I'm really excited to have you on the Challenging University podcast, and thank you for offering some of your time. So I have met you, we've chatted, but for the listeners today and the listeners to come, I'm going to ask you one at a time to introduce yourselves with your full name and what it is that you do today. And I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Adam, would you like to go first?
Perfect. Yeah, I'm more than happy to. I'm not going to give you my middle name because that was one of the reasons why I always got in trouble in school because people found it funny. But
Okay.
I'll shoot it over. So my name is Adam Blair Ballard, and
Yep.
I currently run two CICs
Yep.
alongside my obviously esteemed guest today, Ben, based in Croydon, but we actually deliver the work all over in London, and they're called Gloves Not Guns and Urban Yogis UK.
Awesome. Ben, over to you. Middle name too, if we're going to go for it.
Yeah, so first name Ben or Benjamin if I'm in trouble. Middle name James Eckett. So yeah, I'm the director at Gloves Not Guns and Urban Yogis. We set up Gloves Not Guns just over 7 years ago, I think now. I always get
Yep.
this wrong. Adam will correct me. And then Adam and I took over the organisation Urban Yogis about 3 years ago. So yeah, I met Adam about eight years ago, and yeah, the rest is history.
Nice. And then maybe, given you've got these two CICs, perhaps we could take each of them in turn. So who would be best placed to, if you're going to take one each, who's going to explain what Gloves Not Guns do?
Yeah, so I'm happy to do that, and Ben can do the urban yogis for sure. So Gloves Not Guns sort of started off as a passion project.
Mhm.
I still run the same boxing club, but it was in a different location. And unfortunately, there was a young man that was murdered outside the club, and it sort of brought reality to the fact that there just wasn't enough sort of positive provision interventions within that area for
Mm,
young people that didn't necessarily want to compete in boxing, but just had a safe space to sort of express themselves without being judged or attacked.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, obviously met Ben and sort of relaunched it properly at a new location that we have in the area we're still in now, which is brilliant.
Mhm.
And started off very much community based. So we have free community boxing. Everything we do at Gloves Not Guns is free. We feel that like young people shouldn't have to pay for sport and shouldn't have to sort of have any financial burden or barriers to access
Yeah.
sort of positive enrichment activities.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it started off very sort of slowly, just one session a month, and then it grew. And then we sort of added sort of additional pillars to the work we do. So we started doing some mentoring.
Mhm.
We sort of now have 5 pillars we work from to mentoring, which is done within the community in schools, one-to-one and group.
Mhm.
We have therapies. We've got an internal systemic family therapist that sort of works on a whole family approach, so not just the young people, but they support sort of mums and dads, carers.
Yeah.
We have an employability and education program as well. So we'll work
Yeah.
with young people that are not currently in education
Yeah.
or employability and sort of help bridge that gap. And then obviously we do the community aspect, which is community sessions, and we basically link those to hotspots all over London that are showing sort of areas of high deprivation and crime.
Yeah.
And we sort of implement positive enrichment activities into those areas and work with young people between the ages of 7 to 24.
Wow.
Within that spectrum, we'll sort of work with young people who may have sort of learning difficulties or challenges.
Mhm.
They may be in care, they may have just come out of custody or about to go into custody. So it's a real sort of, they're all amazing young people, but they have their own different challenges that potentially we're sort of there to help support and create that network of support around them.
Yeah. I got a real sense there of that kind of, I suppose, family. And maybe we can get into this a bit more later, but I know from the little that I understand about what might cause young people to become involved in, organised crime or gangs, it is that having father figures, role models, feeling like you belong to a family. And when you speak about the way in which you're working with those young people and bringing them together, it feels like that. Would that be fair?
Yeah, for sure. So that's, I guess, like one of our biggest part of our ethos at Gloves Not Guns is creating that purposeful environment where you can sort of be part of something. I think a lot of young people lack purpose, and unfortunately it's ever too ready and accessible to sort of look for it in negative places. And that's not down to the young person, that could be down to sort of social issues, like you say, environment. But at Gloves Not Guns, we really try and sort of work with everyone. So regardless of the position you're in, it's about like where you're going, and we're sort of dedicated to that. We've been working with young people, like I say, for the last 7 years, who started off in primary school, now sort of looking at going to university, and have really sort of been on that journey with us. But it's like a testament to them as well, to show how dedicated they are, and understanding that you're not going to get judged for the position you're in. It's about sort of always looking forward. So it's really, really positive.
It's awesome. And I'm intrigued because I have been only once inside an old school boxing club where I grew up in Basingstoke, and it was strictly for the boys. And I remember walking up the stairs and the noise of like the squeak of the shoes on the floor and the like beat of the skipping ropes and people on the
smell.
Yes, and the smell.
Yeah.
But the guy that run it was like local legend. Everyone looked up to him. But not one of the boys, and this was like a long time ago, not one of them would have been doing yoga. So how does Urban Yogis come into this, Ben?
Yeah, so would have been about 4 or 5 years ago, we felt like we needed to broaden our offer of activities at Gloves Not Guns. So we'd started doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and we'd often do things like art and music as part of some of the sessions. But we decided that we'd try yoga. There's lots of positive benefits for young people in helping them to regulate their emotions, and obviously the physical aspect of it. So basically what happened was we piloted a program at the time. It was really successful. And at the same time, I don't know how it happened, but we had some sort of communication with a group called Urban Yogis that was originally set up in America. And it was set up in Queens in New York as response to the gun violence in that area at the time. And they were using yoga to support the community with their sort of physical and mental health. And one of the great things about what they did in America was they would support people from the community to become yoga teachers and then teach within their own communities. So there was a couple of people that were running that in the UK. One of them still is a part of Urban Yogis now. Her name's Helen. And essentially Adam and I sort of came on at first to look at supporting them. And we quickly realized that actually, they needed a bit more than support. And Adam and I ended up taking on Urban Yogis as an organization. And since then we've developed it so that we're teaching yoga in prisons, schools and communities. And it fits really well with Gloves Not Guns. I feel like it sometimes will get a different type of young person that maybe doesn't want to engage with boxing, but actually they'd like to do, an activity that maybe doesn't involve punching and that type of sort of more physical activity. So it's again similar to Gloves Not Guns. It's grown very quickly over the past 4 years, and we're having like great success with it. A lot of the work that we're doing in prisons is having a positive impact on those young people, young people that probably wouldn't normally engage in an activity like yoga. So for us, it was really important to see if we can try and break down the stereotypes of what yoga is and who it's for. I think most people from the outside would think it's for sort of middle-aged white women. And so it was important that within our team we've got a diverse group of staff that can relate with the young people. And like I said, it's had great success. And I think just moving on from that, Adam and I are going to be launching a new organisation from the 1st of March, because I suppose if you were looking at what we just explained about, we've got Gloves Not Guns, we've got Urban Yogis, they're very similar organisations, and Adam and I both run them both. And I think as stakeholders and funders and young people, it was maybe getting a little bit confusing about what project they're a part of and how they access that project. And we had some really good advice last year from some CEOs of charities that had been through mergers, and we were offered some pro bono support from a marketing brand called JDO. And with our team and with young people over the past 6 months, we've developed a new organisation, which will start, as I say, from the 1st of March. And Gloves Not Guns and Urban Yogis will still be a part of that, but they'll sit as projects within it rather than their own organisations. And we're hoping this new organisation will offer us more sustainability long term. It will make it much more accessible and diverse around what we can offer. And it's really, really like exciting times for us this year.
And something that strikes me is that, like with the systemic family therapy, and I've just been reading, is it Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, and talking about trauma, and it touches on things like yoga, family therapy, and it's how do you kind of balance that? You've got young people coming in that you work with, where you're just getting them to move their bodies and to breathe and to offer them a place to be, versus engaging some really kind of, I suppose, serious therapies. And how do you get, because you must be having to speak several different languages at the same time to different groups of people, and like you say, you've got funders, and how do you navigate that as people leading these organizations?
I think we always go back to, whenever we talk about this, everything sort of happened organically at the organization. And when Adam first started Gloves Not Guns, and I'm just talking for you, Adam, so just butt in if I'm wrong. But obviously, his passion and purpose with it was to get kids off the street and get them into the boxing club that he was running at the time. And then as it's developed, like together, we've realised that it's not as simple as that. Like, if you want to solve the issue of serious youth violence, you have to come at it from all different aspects. You need to be looking at, getting young people off the street and doing something positive. Great. Also, you need to be looking at the young people that have got more entrenched issues and trauma and things like that. They're going to need a bit more of that one-to-one support. So we brought in the mentoring, and that way we can do quite targeted work around some of the issues they're dealing with. And then from that, we realized, well, actually, some of these issues a youth worker won't be able to solve. Actually, they need therapy to understand and get to the root cause of that problem. And then from that as well, like, we looked at, well, why are young people getting involved in crime and those types of things? And Adam mentioned it earlier. A lot of it is that sense of belonging, but also it's financial. There's a massive correlation to the amount of young people that are involved in those issues are from backgrounds of poverty. So the only way we're going to be able to solve that for them is by helping them to go through education or employment. And it might not be, I know your podcast is about this, it might not be university, but it might be actually getting them into a career that is going to have financial reward for them, so that they don't feel like they need to go and sell drugs on the street. So as I said, it's grown organically, and it's Adam and I and the team of people and our youth panel have realised, as things have gone on, well, actually, we need to add this service to it. And we've got more stuff that we're going to develop over the next few years, because we know that like there's more things we can do to help solve this issue.
I think it's really important. Sorry to interrupt. I think it's really important as well, sort of going off what Ben said about how the actual speaking about therapy comes into the voice of young people, because there is a stigma around sort of young people sort of accessing help, but even talking about their issues. So I guess like we've used sport as a bit of a vehicle to get them involved in that first and build that trust, so then they can access it without the fear of sort of judgment. And like Ben said, we've got some pretty sort of exciting stuff going on in the background around how we deliver therapy to young people, which I think will really sort of break the curve in people sort of having that maybe negative view on it. And I think as well, we don't just dive in straight away, like through the yoga and well-being, and even through the boxing, we look at sort of breathing exercises, emotional regulation. And I think that sort of starts breaking the barrier to actually going, right, I do need to speak to someone, and I'm going to speak to that person out of a place of like help, not just sort of judgment. So yeah, it's really, really important. We all support sort of young people using everything, not just sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've seen social services notes on my family, and it is like there's nothing like seeing somebody who's written a judgment about you that is going to make you fearful of sitting down with someone who's got like pen and paper. So I think
that's it.
Yeah. So let's learn a little bit about your backgrounds. Adam, when you were at school, at secondary school, because it's something I ask all my guests, what were your experiences that perhaps shaped the person you are today?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to like a sort of quite decent mixed school. Was brought up, just a caveat, brought up with both my parents. Had an older brother, used to sort of beat me up, but in a nice way, you know what I mean? Not in an aggressive way, sort of toughen me up for secondary school. But I took the I won't use the language, but I took the sort of position of like class clown, and like wanted to sort of gain that notoriety of being like tough and funny and just mouthy. And I think it worked for me for a couple of years in terms of like I was probably quite, not in an arrogant way, like popular amongst my peers, but definitely not in terms of like the teachers. And I think looking back, like reflectively, it's just had a massive identity crisis. Like I say, lived in a really nice area, had like two parents that were always there, a lot of loving, but I sort of wanted to be this tough guy, and I thought I was from like a bad area, and I sort of started to hang around with people that it's like a very similar sort of load of kids have the same story, but sort of hanging around with people I shouldn't have and doing things I shouldn't be doing. Looking back, then I thought I was really like needed to do stuff to sort of get attention. And yeah, it just led me to sort of got kicked out of school at the end of sort of my GCSE or before my GCSE, so wasn't able to take them in that school, and it made and we'll get to this, made me have to be at school for another year. So I actually left school at 19. I had to go to another sixth form. Luckily I was sort of fairly decent at rugby, so I was able to get into like a rugby school as a sixth form. But then I got suspended from there for like something ridiculous, and it was just like I don't know, I sort of didn't take it seriously, and it's a real regret of mine, because getting to an age of like I am now, like late 30s, I sort of now feel like I'm in a position where I sort of made a bit of a mountain out of a molehill at school. Like I could have just applied myself a lot better. I was I don't know what you call it, like diagnosed with dyspraxia when I was in school. So I sort of maybe felt I used that a little bit, like to my advantage, to sort of get away with acting silly. But on the whole, no, like I really enjoyed secondary school. I just saw it as a bit of a joke, though. I didn't really take it seriously, which is probably quite ashamed of myself now when I look back. Some of the sort of interactions I had with teachers and adults, but I also as well am quite open to the fact of like there were some, I guess, like a couple of really good teachers, but there were some like awful ones as well. And I think back at like how they were speaking to children. And as an adult now with like a son, and my niece is at secondary school, she lives with us, like I look at interactions that they have with teachers and just think like, wow, like what a difference sort of 25 years makes in relation to like how I was spoken to at school and how I was treated. But yeah, that was sort of my secondary school.
And what led to you, I mean, we're going to compress things a bit here. What led to you setting up the boxing club?
Yeah, so I obviously, like I said, played rugby to like a fairly decent level, and then moved from a sort of mixed school to a single sex school, and moved there with the attitude that I was still like head of the class, number one or whatever. and very, very quickly realised like I wasn't in the hierarchy at all. And that was quite like a single sex school. And I remember, I won't give his name because he's headmaster of a really good school now, but I sort of went to a rugby session, like my first rugby session, and they sort of knew who I was coming into it because we had played them, and sort of some of the people knew me. And the teacher would have been probably early 20s, and he just smashed me. And like, just, yeah, was saying like, you're not going to be like a big player here. Like,
Wow.
but he did it in a way that I guess I had a little bit of fear that I'd not had before. Like I didn't experience it, but it humbled me a little bit. And then from school, we just, yeah, I don't know, it just started getting like a lot of kids would go out looking to sort of meet girls and stuff like that. And me and my friends, for whatever reason, and again, it's really sort of looked back quite shamed way, just looked for trouble, like looked for fights, like sort of enjoyed fighting kids from other areas and went out looking for that sort of issue. We weren't in a gang. I sort of felt that I'd have sort of a group of mates outside of school that probably negatively impacted how I was in school. So I thought I was a bit tougher than I was. And I went to a boxing gym, and again, just got humbled straight away. Like went in there with a massive attitude and a chip on my shoulder, and found out very quickly, yeah, it wasn't the way to go. And I realized it was a really short period of time where it just sort of shocked me into understanding how to act and like about respect and respecting other people and sort of not judging sort of people by how they look and things. And it really put me on a real positive path, because I'm not going to stand here and go, oh, you know, I could have been dead or in prison and all that, because I think that's overused. I think a lot of people say that, and it's probably not true.
Yeah.
But I was on a pathway of like doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing. And I was getting to the point of like, I needed something in my life that would hook me to really change and understand that. And I found that through boxing. And then obviously competed, took my coaching qualifications after I'd competed. And then, yeah, sort of got into boxing, actually had a boxing club in a area in Kent, and it was sort of 99% travellers were at the boxing club. So it was a really different dynamic to what I have in Croydon now. Yeah. And then moved to Croydon because my wife, she wasn't my wife then, but my fiance or girlfriend, whatever, lived in Croydon. So I moved to a boxing club there, and the rest is sort of history.
Wow, move for love.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really interesting actually what you say about with the boxing thing. So just as a quick aside, so did you do ABA and you had a kind of...
Yeah, so I actually started off doing Muay Thai, so Thai boxing. Yeah, and then took my qualifications in, it used to be ABA. Now it's called England Boxing. So there's England Boxing and the Alliance. So we compete against clubs like Basingstoke. Used to be a guy, Jeff Mitchell, I think was the guy who ran it. There's some really, really good sort of boxers out from there. So yeah, so that would mean we would compete and coach against kids from all over the country. So we would go to like Manchester and Newcastle, and that was really important for me as well, because it, again, when you get taken out of your environment and you go to areas that, you know, effectively are a lot sort of worse in terms of like deprivation and stuff, it gives you that reality check that maybe you're not sort of this persona you're carrying out to be. And I think it's really important that especially young men are sort of, it sounds like quite controversial what I'm going to say, but are like humbled and given a reality check sometimes, because it can stop you from sort of going on to things that you sort of shouldn't be involved in. And I think sport was that thing for me that really sort of made me aware of like, there's a right and wrong way of things to do. And like, it's definitely about being on the right path.
Yeah. Love it. And Ben, how about you? What was your school experience? Got any good kind of memories to share that set you up for where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Torbay, down in Devon. So yeah, very different to London. But interestingly, you know, there's a lot of similarities as well. It's Torquay and Paynton and Brixton were quite like deprived areas. Like I know, read an article recently. Torquay is now like in the sort of top 20 most deprived areas of England.
Wow.
So there's a lot of issues down there, but different to London in the sense of the serious youth violence and things like that. But school, so probably similar to Adam, I didn't do particularly well at secondary school. I think at the end of year 6, I had quite a lot of stuff happen in my home life. So yeah, my mum and my stepdad broke up, and I sort of found out that my dad wasn't my dad, and met my real dad, and loads of other things going on at home at the time. So I went into secondary school probably quite unsettled, and added to that, I wasn't very academic, and it turned out actually later on in life, when I went to university, like in my late 20s, I got to sort of diagnosed with dyslexia. But I think in school I just thought I was a bit stupid. But similar to Adam, though, loved sport, and I think it was always something that was there in my life. So I played football, and I played at sort of a reasonably high level. So I played for Plymouth Argyle when I was younger, and then I stopped for a few years, and then I ended up getting back into football towards the end of school. But yeah, I it's funny, when I left school, I look back at it and I think, oh, what an amazing time, like, being with my friends and all that. But at the time when I was in school, I absolutely hated it. And I think it was just because I struggled with the academia, and I got in trouble a lot, and I got excluded and things like that quite a bit. I think a turning point for me was I wasn't predicted to get any sort of A to C grades, and wasn't going to be in all of my exams. And I got arrested in year 11 for some drug related charges. And my mum just came down on me so hard, and obviously also, like, I had a yacht worker and things like that. And it really, like, put me in line, a little bit like what Adam was saying, having that sort of tough love sometimes works quite well. And my granddad as well, he's like sort of old school, like northerner, and just like, again, wasn't having any of it. And I think, like, for the last 6 months of my secondary school, I really sort of got, worked hard, and I ended up doing okay. Like, I think I got 4 or 5 A to C grades.
Wow.
Which meant when I went to college, I was able to then go and do like a BTEC. So school was, I look back at it and I think, oh, it was amazing, but at the time it wasn't for me. And I think as well, back then, I'm so old now, this is like over 20 years ago, whatever, no, like 25 years ago. There weren't the same options back then as like these days. If you weren't academic, you can maybe go and do like some sort of like labouring or alternative education. We didn't really have it back then, and the school that I was at as well wasn't the best school. There was a lot of problems in the school at the time.
And so you said you went on to uni in your late 20s, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. What did you go on to do?
So firstly, I was working in a school at the time. I was working as a learning mentor in a school, and I felt like I wanted to go and do therapy at first. So I went and did my level 2 and 3 in child therapy, and because I'd never had therapy, and obviously I've been through quite a lot when I was younger. The actual course just like destroyed me. Like it really sort of brought up everything for me. And actually, at the end of the course, the tutor said that, I don't think you're ready to become a therapist. I think you need to go and have therapy. So I went down that route. But then anyway, I ended up, I really wanted to study something, and I decided to go and do a degree in youth and community work and social pedagogy. So that was what I went and did. I think I did it when I must have been like 28, and I finished when I was 32. So during that time, got married and had a baby, and started with Gloves Not Guns with Adam. So it was a really busy period of my life, but I loved it. I really enjoyed like learning something that I had an interest in. And yeah, and I had sort of my diagnosis of dyslexia, so I sort of understood that I needed to put more strategies in place for my learning. And it was a real like accessible course as well. A lot of it was around practice, and that was what I always felt my strong point was I could work with people and young people and things like that, but I couldn't always put the theory behind it. So yeah, no, it definitely changed my my ideas around education from having quite a negative experience of school to going on to doing something that I really enjoyed. And you know, I think I got a 2-1 in it, and yeah, I was really sort of proud.
And what was it that brought the two of you together?
So I think I slid into Adam's DMs, actually, if I'm honest.
I knew you were gonna
It's
say
like
that.
a dating app.
I saw at the time I was looking at boxing clubs in the area. I was living in Fulton Heath, and I saw on Adam's profile at the time this Gloves Not Guns banner, and just contacted him. And then I went down to the club. Sorry, Adam, did you want to jump in?
No, I used to be quite active on social media before I start to hate it. And I had a friend messaged me to sort of come and have a look. Sort of played hard to get, didn't really come down for a little while. And then eventually we met, and it was sort of just, you know, when you meet someone, we're probably quite different as like people, but it's sort of our values were very aligned in terms of like wanting to help young people, and sort of had been through stuff that wasn't necessarily, you know, really serious youth violence, but it meant that we understood what young people feel like, and obviously we've been young before, but it just seemed to click. And from then we were always very cautious of going at like a snail's pace in terms of like how we help people, because we wanted it to be sustainable. We've both seen a lot of organizations that pop up, sort of come up with this magical cure that they're going to end youth violence and stabbings, and then they're gone in like 6 months' time. So for us, it was very much like strategically building the organization and getting the engagement right with young people. And just sort of going forward like that.
And actually, something you just said there really strikes me, because when I went to look initially at the Gloves Not Guns website, and I saw you had like a show reel with Nike. I always get, my kids always tell me off because I say Adidas as well, and they go, no, it's Adidas. Anyway, so you had that, and I was like, wow, that's like, you know, big brand, flashy. And then if I was going to do a clanger of a name drop, you know, well, I'll let you do it. You had somebody very influential come spend time with
the
you
other day. So we had Idris Elba came and visited the boxing gym. Was it last Friday or a couple of Fridays ago? I think it was a couple of weeks ago. So he's just started launched a sort of campaign and organization called Don't Stop Your Future. I think it was originally Don't Stab Your Future, but I think he's had essentially to change it. But that was a really inspiring sort of event. So we basically facilitated a community panel where it was like local dignitaries all over London, though. So community activists, community leaders, from sort of all different sectors. And then Idris obviously came in to the gym and sort of spoke about what he wanted to do and how he could help. And I just think it was, you know, we've had loads of different, not necessarily to that level, but people say they want to come and help and they want to do good. And I think a lot of the time it appears to be from like a social status type of thing. They want to look like they're helping. But I mean, he sort of came to the pitch black of Fulton Heath at like 11 o'clock at night on a Friday, and was there openly to taking photos of everyone, hearing everyone. And you know what it's like, sometimes people can like have a moan up and that, and he was just there. He was quite open, he wanted to listen. And it just seemed very sort of genuine, like his want for help. And it's like, the reality is like, he doesn't need to do it. He's sort of this massive A-lister who really could be sitting a sunbed somewhere and not having to worry about stuff that's going on. But I think it's really sort of testament to him as a person. I know he grew up in Hackney and sort of suffered some of the social issues as well that young people do today. So I think it's really important that someone of his sort of status and character has sort of put himself forward. And yeah, like Ben says, we're hopefully meeting next week or this week with his team and look to really sort of push that partnership moving forward.
And I think some people would, like you, as you say, you get maybe like those flash in the pan organisations that say, yeah, we've got a magic wand, we're going to fix it, and then 6 months later they're gone because the original intention may be good, but they're looking for that big sponsorship A-lister visit immediately, whereas you've been, as you say, drip by drip, going for
7 years. So like
7 years.
You know, the reality is, and all due respect to him, like it's gonna carry on regardless. Like at the moment, you know, he can come down on Friday and it's amazing, but that doesn't automatically quell what's going on. So I think having the fact that it sort of started as a passion project for us as well, and me and Ben sort of self-funded it for a couple of years, whilst we both had full-time jobs. You know, we both had kids during that time, and it's sort of, we're in it regardless. Like who wants to get involved, we're in it. You can't sort of get involved in something like this and then like duck out. You have to sort of be committed, and I think that's what's important to show when you have like an A-lister come down or someone who's got maybe like, you know, a bigger reach than us, thing, and not just something that's done like in a tokenistic way.
And tell me about some of the thinking about, like you said, the things that motivate you and drive you, and the sort of results that you might expect to achieve over, as you say, you've got children as young as 7 and young adults up to the age of 24. What are some of the achievements that these young people have, or what are some of the things that you witness them experiencing by virtue of your programs?
Do you want to speak on this, Ben? I'm happy to, but
I don't mind. So I mean, successes wise, we've had a lot of young people that have been through the project that we supported into employment and education. We had a young person that we worked with quite some time ago. It would have been about 4 or 5 years ago, that lived on an estate that we were working at the time. Me and Adam were delivering a program. The funding ended on that estate, and then he used to travel from there to our boxing club, which is probably like 45 minutes each week. And he would go, you know, on a Tuesday and a Thursday night. And anyway, this young person could barely had the confidence to talk to me and Adam, let alone like in a group. And anyway, he went through the employability program that Adam delivers, and we ended up getting him a job in a restaurant up in Covent Garden, and he's now like training as a chef. And I think we've got a lot of really nice stories around young people getting into education and employment, which is great. We've had lots of successes in sport. So we had a young person that came through our program right at the beginning, which would have been seven years ago, who was heavily involved in county lines and ended up boxing through Gunz, not Gunz, becoming a staff member. Then once he'd got to a certain level, he was boxing for Adam, and he won a national championships under Adam's boxing club and became like one of the first Nike athletes as well. So
wow,
I mean, that was a huge success. We've got a lot of our young people who are competing in Brazilian jiu-jitsu and doing really excelling in the sport that they've chosen to go down. And then I think like on a more sort of related to the therapeutic element of our work and mentoring work, which I can't really talk about in too much detail, but we've had a lot of young people that have had better outcomes in their life, whether it be they're still in school, whether they're still in their home environment, their mental health's improved, they're not using cannabis or drugs, reduced incidents of them carrying weapons, things like that. We've had a lot of good outcomes in prisons where when young people have left prison, we've been able to support them. So the outcomes across the organisation are huge and quite range.
Yeah, I think as well, Ben mentioned earlier on about sort of being able to incentivise young people. And give them alternative options when it comes to making money. And that's something we've done massively in the organisation, is train up young people who've been part of the project to end up staffing sort of community sessions and leading on sort of areas within the business. So sort of 50% of our current staff at the moment are young people that have come through the project that we supported, and they've been put on that pathway, and they've been trained up, and now they're sort of earning like well above the London living wage to deliver stuff that they've gone through. And I think it's a really wholesome approach when you're working with someone to be able to be relatable and have that common ground, which they sort of understand quite a lot of the stuff that goes on with young people sort of in today's climate, and they're able to really help unpick those issues and challenges young people may have, because you know they're not that far removed from them. And it also allows them to sort of, or allows us to develop them and give them that base sort of work experience where they can then sort of take that on however they want to into sort of further employment later on in life.
And so thinking about, I just spend the whole day talking to you, but I'm conscious you have things to do.
Of course.
Thinking about what's next and how people can get involved. So if there are organisations, because you said you work with prisons, and so I guess there's an element of maybe people are referred to you, or there are organisations that work with you. How do people get to do that, to approach you to talk about working together?
Yeah, so in terms of like referring young people, we get referrals from like the police, prisons, local authorities, social care, schools. In relation to people sort of wanting to do partnership work or work with us, like we can be reached on our website, email, social media. Like we're really sort of interactive. We love finding out about projects that are sort of doing stuff similar to us, because you know it's not this isn't a thing that you do in silo. You've got to reach out to people, you've got to work with others, and I think that collaborative sort of approach really helps when you're working with young people, because like Ben touched on earlier, not every young person wants to do boxing or yoga or jiu-jitsu, and it's having that ability to signpost them to something positive where they can sort of get involved in something they're interested in. And there are loads of like amazing sort of organisation and groups in London and the UK that do that. So it's just about being really sort of open, and communication I think is key to a lot of this.
And how about for you were doing some work for young women as well, because is it that how does that work out in terms of the demographic of young people you work with? Is it mostly young men, or is there provision for young women? Is it mixed?
Yeah, so historically I'd say like 90% of young people that we worked with were male. And I think sometimes it's because of the sport. Like the referrers automatically think, oh, that's for a male. So we've been doing a lot of work over the past 12 months to really change that. So we firstly is making sure that we've got more female coaches and more female staff, and talking to referrers like stakeholders like local authorities, schools, that actually this project is for girls, and you know we need more referrals. But the real big shift is we were funded by the Violence Reduction Unit last year to run a 2-year piece of work around female only. And what we've done with that is we're creating female only spaces. So we work across 5 different boroughs at the moment, but the 3 boroughs that we're delivering that in, there's regular sessions that girls can go to after school or at weekends, in which they can engage in boxing or an activity, and it will just be a space for girls. And I think that's really helped us shift and change the numbers a little bit, because you know, predominantly, like if a girl was to come to a Thursday night session at the boxing club, you know, that it's a busy session, there's probably 20 to 30 young people there, and there's only a couple girls there. So if you're, you know, lacking confidence, or you know you don't want to be around a large amount of boys, which is completely understandable, you won't engage with it. So by having this space where they can go in and it's just for girls, it's really helped. And then through that we're able to also add on targeted sessions and education for the girls, specific to what they want to learn and know about. And then alongside that project, we're also mentoring girls that are identified and been referred through social care, youth offending, education as high risk to crime and exploitation.
Yeah.
I think girls often there aren't enough support for females that are engaging in those types of behaviours, and I think there was for us, it was really important we were able to set up some programs to support girls. And I think we've just employed a new female manager that's joined the team. We've got our youth panel that is made up of 50-50. So we're hoping that we're going to really sort of get more of a female voice into the organisation and how we develop and move forward. Because obviously Adam and I set it up, 2 males, and it wasn't, that's just the way it was, but it's important for us to make sure that there's female leadership within what we're doing going forward.
And 2 final questions. First one is corporate sponsors. Would you like some of those? Can we encourage people to support you in some way that work in outside of, I guess, the typical organisations that you work with?
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, that's a massive part of our work at the moment, is how we engage with corporates and get that sustainable support from them, because I think corporates have a responsibility to support the communities they work in, and we've been very fortunate over the years. We've had support from Nike. We've currently been supported by Waits Property Group in Croydon, Natura, which is a sort of big food manufacturing organisation. With Knight Frank in the past has supported us. So we've got a fundraising manager and a marketing team that are really supporting around that at the moment, and looking at how we can engage with corporates. And it's not just from a perspective of them giving us money, it's actually like them giving opportunities to young people. So say, for instance, Natura, they're offering young people the opportunity to go and work there and learn more about the food industry, and Waits, they're supporting around like how young people can get into property management, construction, all these different works. And the idea is as well is to sort of try and break down those stereotypes of what young people can do in regards to employment, because a lot of the young people we support, I'll give an example. A young person that maybe has been selling drugs and working and doing that for X amount of time, obviously we don't want them to do that anymore because of the risks, and it's against the law. But that young person would have learned a lot of like entrepreneurial skills from doing that. And actually, how can we channel that into a really positive way that they can learn, maybe how to work in finance or something like that. So and I mean, with corporates, like they can just reach out to us, as Adam said, through email and just checking out our website and seeing what we're up to.
Awesome. And a final question for you both. So you first, Adam. What has, I ask everybody this, what has held you in good stead, do you feel, sort of throughout your life and career? What would you pass on as a kind of maybe character trait or something about you that served you well?
I think like always back yourself. Like I feel like when you're in education and employment, there's sometimes this sort of one size fits all approach that sort of organizations have, especially in education. And I think if you're passionate about something and you're sort of, really do want to make a change, or you want to sort of get to somewhere in life, you've got to really believe in that passion and push yourself forward. I sort of changed, left my full-time job a couple of years ago to really concentrate on Gloves Not Guns. It's like the best thing I've ever done. And I've always had that in my mind ever since I was at school, and to help people and to do stuff. And regardless of any sort of issues I had and trials and tribulations, I've always just kept on that, one day it's going to happen. And I think it's really important. It sort of builds sort of resilience internally and allows you to sort of, just back yourself.
I feel a little bit emotional. Ben, how about you?
I would agree with everything that Adam just said. And for me, it's work ethic. Like just working hard. I've always found like, whatever you're doing, if you work hard towards that goal, you'll achieve it. And when I first moved to London, I had like no money. I had a job in a school which was really sort of not well paid at all. And London's an expensive place to live. And I went and got my personal training qualification, and I worked hard in the evenings and trained people so that I could afford to live in London. And, you know, like throughout my life, whatever I've done, I've tried to work hard. And that's, I think, you know, that's the success of Gloves Not Gunz and Urban Yogis, and what we're doing now is massively passion, as Adam said, and purpose. But I think as well, it's hard work. Me and Adam, like, we've not stopped grinding for this to be successful. Like, we've both, in the time that we've met, we've both had children, we've both moved house, we've both worked full time. Like, up until, as Adam said, up until 2 years ago, like, Adam was working full time and doing this. You know, we've both had to, and the thing is, and it goes back to the passion thing, because we love it so much, it doesn't feel like work. Sometimes it does, don't get me wrong. If you've got to do a funding evaluation and like you've got loads of other stuff on it, sort of, that can be a bit tough. But generally, like, we both love it, so it's we don't mind putting the hours in. But I do say it to young people all the time, like, if whatever you want in life, you have to work hard for. It's not just going to come to you. And I think this is not to have a moan, but I think this is one of the problems today in society, is that a lot of people don't want to work hard for things. They just want that automatic success and gratitude. And actually, that's just not reality. And it was like what Adam said earlier about sometimes, like, that tough love and telling someone how it is the only way that you're going to shift. And for me, that happened to me, you know, when I was younger, when I got into trouble. And actually, my granddad, you know, he worked hard all his life, and you know, he said, you've just got to graft if you want to get what you want. So yeah, I think that would be my thing that I would share. Nice
words to live by. Thank you so much. I've had a little pep talk, I feel like. It's been a real pleasure to have you on, and looking forward to your announcement in March.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks.